What is the first word that comes to mind when you think of Kellen?
Honestly, it's probably spunky.
Intellectual.
Goofy. Yeah.
For me, it's kind of a tie between capable and independent.
Pleasant surprise.
The driving.
Driving, that's a good word.
Impossible? Because, like, how can it be this amazing?
He's a hero to everyone. Like, he may not be famous to the world, but he's famous to all who know him. One in particular, Battle of the Bands that he played in that was so much fun. At the end, they had a little contest to see who was the best guitarist out of all the bands. So they lined up all the guitarists across the stage, and they'd walk across and put their hand over each one, and the audience would cheer. And so it came down to Kellen and one other guitarist as the favorite and the best guitarist. So when they put their hand over Kellen's head, and the audience would erupt in cheering, and then they'd put it over the other kid's head and the audience would erupt, and it was kind of hard to tell. So anyway, Kellen says, well, let's duel it out. So Kellen says, let's arm wrestle it out. So they had an arm wrestle, and Kellen was crowned the best guitarist.
What, an arm wrestle? That's awesome.
Whenever I think of funny stories of Kellen, is him slurping whatever he's eating. And he was such the consummate slurper, he would even slurp his granola bars.
When he was about probably 1 to 2 in that age range. He was a very serious kid. And sometimes when he was really serious, we found it funny. And he would get angry, and we would laugh, and it would make him more angry. And so he got to a point where he was just so frustrated that we were laughing at him and not understanding that he would like hold his fingers out at us, and I swear it looked like he was the Emperor from Star Wars, and that electricity was going to come out of his fingers. He would just hold them up and so bugged, and of course it always made us laugh, and that made him more mad, and he didn't like it, but to me I just love that memory.
Okay, do you have a favorite story about Kellen?
Yeah.
Want to tell it to me?
I was playing with him in the church, and we didn't listen, but we were still playing and not saying that.
Oh yeah, I remember when Kellen was making mac and cheese for us at our old house. And instead of putting 4 tablespoons of butter in, he put 4 sticks. It was so bad. Yeah.
He was supposed to go to youth conference with the church group, and everyone, met in the parking lot, and I dropped him off with his sleeping bag, and I waved goodbye and drove away. And then a little bit later I got a phone call, and they said, we just saw Kellen walking down the highway, and he wasn't with the group, and so apparently after I dropped him off, he broke off from the group and started hiking to the mountains because he didn't want to go to youth conference. So some of the leaders from the church pulled over on the side of the road and said, Kellen, what are you doing? And he's like, oh, I'm just going into the mountains to live for a few days.
Think back to when he was little. He's kind of like a superhero. I could still see him flying off couches and flying through the air, down the stairs, almost like he had a cape on his back, and he was so invincible. And that's how I kind of think of Kellen as like a superhero.
Something that Kellen really struggled with was just being hard on himself. He was, bummed out at the fact that he was almost 21 and he didn't have $1 million. He wasn't a millionaire kind of thing. I mean, it's good to shoot high, but not to the point where, he was being detrimental to his own mental health. And so that's probably the biggest thing that I've learned from him is to not just like shoot for the stars and so that's probably the number one lesson I've learned from him is just to go easier on yourself and to be okay with not being where you want to be just yet.
Probably the biggest lesson I've learned is to be charitable and look out for the little guy or somebody, watch for people in need, help others. Because Kellen did that, and I think that's probably the thing I learned the most from Kellen. Don't follow your dreams, be ahead of them. I've learned a lot of things from him, but that's definitely the number one lesson I've learned from him, and it's a really good lesson everyone needs to know, and he taught to me pretty well.
I think Kellen was just a go-getter, and he gave everything his all. I think that's it. Just take chances and dream big, and it's okay if you don't always succeed.
I think over and above all these accomplishments he had was just the way he treated people.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone that kind of came out of the woodwork at the time of the funeral, just he was the most important person in their life.
I had people that I had never met before just coming up to me and saying, like, he was my best friend. Like, he was everybody's best friend. He would always encourage them and really help them see the best in themselves. And it's just ironic because he didn't have the same charity for himself and the ability to forgive himself and say, it's okay, I'm only human, we'll try again tomorrow. But that's how he was with other people. He was always telling people not to be so hard on themselves and that they had wonderful potential, especially his younger siblings. He was always building them up, and he was very charitable and loving with other people.